Out of the three of you, Neville, who fulfills which role within the trio? Who does which bit of the planning and the writing and the animating?
I think Mark and I come up with the ideas, and Phil's the producer.
So you come up with the ideas together, and do you then start drawing them out, or do you then go to a team of people who start drawing them out, or how does that work?
It's pretty much the three of us until we get into production. So,
and then we have a team.
And then we have a great team in London. We do it all in London. There's about 30 of us, and the hand-picked people we've worked for maybe 10 years or maybe even longer now. So it's very much a village sort of feel to the whole community.
And is there ever a point where you just think, I've run out of ideas, there's nothing more there, we're dry?
Every Monday.
But because it's such a simple starting point with Peppa, we realised that there are limitless ideas, really, because it's all based on things that really happen in real life, and so it is quite observational. I mean, if one of us is having, say some building work done at home or whatever, then we'll probably do an episode about
outcomes Mr.
building work. Exactly. So it is very much, each episode is, the starting point will be something that's happened or something that, somebody's told us, or a funny story someone's told us. Initially, when the little girl who was the first Peppa, who did the voice of Peppa, a lot of her exploits were starting points for episodes. So her parents would tell us about things she'd said or things that had happened, and we think, that'd be good, we can use that in an episode. And in fact, in some of the earlier scripts, even her mother was one of the writers of so she would come forward and she'd say, I think this would be a good idea for an episode.
And Phil, how many Peppas have there been?
Oh, wow. Well, every time I come to Mark and they say, we're just going to do another 52 episodes. It's 208 episodes now, and a Christmas special, which is a sort of 10 or 11 minute one-off, so to speak.
And in terms of the actual person who voices Peppa, that's changed as well over the
years.
Yes,
we've had three people voice Peppa. We've had originally Lily Snowden-Fine, who was a friend of ours daughter. And originally, when the first trailer was made, we had an adult, Morwenna, who is here, very kindly gave us the original voice of Peppa. In fact, when we looked at it, we thought, Morwenna, of course, is the voice of Mummy Pig, and there's only one Mummy Pig. But when we listened to it, we just thought, perhaps it might be better to think about using somebody younger. So we had, Lily was a friend of ours daughter, so we tried her, and it worked really well. And then, of course, Lily grew up, and actually she moved to Canada. So we then had Cecily Bloom, who did the second voice of Peppa, and of course now we have the wonderful Harley Bird, who is up there, who is the current voice of Peppa. She's really fantastic.
Obviously, you talked about Peppa Pig being the show built around the family and how that worked. So can you tell us about how Ben and Holly came about?
Ben and Holly, well, Peppa is all based on real life and a child's real, experiences, if you like. Obviously very stylized, but taken a bit further. And Ben and Holly is almost the opposite of that, because Ben and Holly is set in a fantasy world of elves and fairies. And it's all to do with things like the scale of things, like the fact that they're tiny little characters. It's much more in a way of kind of traditional animation thing. I mean, it's as opposite as we could make it, in a way, to Peppa. But in amongst that, the characters still have their daily lives and so on.
And in terms of your approach when you're making Ben and Holly, is it very much the same kind of process as Peppa, or is there anything you do differently, or any techniques you do differently, or any of the animation? Or
we just seem to get more complex with each series, so this seems to be more effects on this one. But if we go back to Peppa again, we'll be incorporating them in there. So we just seem to be always pushing the boundaries, really. But I think once we get beyond the script, is pretty much the same weekly sort of system, just a bit more intense, possibly.
Yeah. Ben and Holly is probably a little bit richer in a sense than Peppa, because it involves magic, slightly more epic stories, if you like. But so it is harder, and I think the second series that we're making at the moment is much more complex than the first series.
Yeah, because Ben and Holly can go to the moon, literally go to the moon, whereas Peppa can think about going to the moon. But we actually do take Ben and Holly to the moon or under the sea. It's a lot more fantastical.
Can you tell us a little bit about what happened for you to get the role of Peppa Pig? What did you have to do to get the role, and how did you feel when you got it?
Well, first what you've got to do is you've got to go up for an audition, then you might get penciled, and then they'll tell you if you've got the part or not. And I was lucky enough to get the part, and it's all been really, really exciting with it, and it's just a really, really great experience for me.
And are there any times when you are, and I guess this is the same to all of you, is there any time when you're out and about doing your shopping or your everyday work when people suddenly recognise your voices from the roles that you play? Harley, do you want to start off with?
I've never really had that. No.
I guess it's because you're not snorting too much as well. Maybe if when you talked you went at the end, maybe that would happen.
Yeah, I'm afraid I have had that quite a bit. You know, around Sainsbury's, all of a sudden something out the corner of your eye, your peripheral vision, you see a little child stop and go, "Mummy, Mummy," and then about 5 minutes later, further down the shop, you go, "Excuse me, I don't want to bother you," and yeah, but it's a wonderful thing to be a part of. It's so magical. I think it can be quite alarming for little ones to have their parents say, look, it's Daddy Pig, and they're saying, no, it's not. It's a 50-year-old man who sounds a bit like Peppa Pig, Daddy Pig.
Also, probably a little bit alarming for you, people pointing at you and saying "Daddy Pig." It's probably not,
Yeah, you kind of grow to get used to it.
I'm getting used to that one.
No.
Well, Wenna, from your point of view, obviously you don't look like anything like your character, and well, not much, and but it is unmistakably Mummy Pig. I mean, does that come out? Is that something that people?
Well, it's strange because it doesn't really sound that much like my voice. But Mark and Nev are very specific when they ask you to do a voice, and I wouldn't necessarily have known, how to do Mummy Pig's voice. She's just, sounds a little bit like, just sort of warmer and nice. And they were very specific about how they wanted that to be. And then I do Madame Gazelle as well. Madame Gazelle, who, sings the Bing Bong song. And again, they're sort of quite specific. They certainly say no when they don't like a voice. She's just greeted with them, just a lot of whispering. And Nev is surprisingly tough and strict. But I think, as I say, it really all comes from Mark and Nev, and then we sort of try different things and try different voices, and then suddenly they go, oh yeah, that one, we like that one. So that's how it sort of evolves.
So John, if I can bring you in now, maybe you want to just grab the microphone from Harley a second. You're obviously the narrator on the show.
Invisible, yes.
Which is so we don't actually see a character for you.
No, there's no character for me. The narrator is just a disembodied voice. But I do some of the other smaller characters. I do Mr. Potato.
Oh, okay, good.
Oh, has this outrageous French accent? He talks like this, And all you children must eat your vegetables. They are good for you. Mr. Potato.
So presumably, when you're in Sainsbury's, people will come up to you and say it's Mr. Potato when they...
If I'm talking like this, yes, they do, yes. And then they ask me to leave. But Mark and Neil are very good because there are a lot of the smaller characters which only have one or two lines occasionally. So they will say, well, just try a few things out. And they will go with some quite interesting choices. I mean, who would have thought that Pedro Pony's father would sound a bit like Sean Connery? But it does, Mr. Pony. And Mr. Labrador is a little bit like Tommy Cooper. So they went with that. So bless them and thank them for that.